This is We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling, where I give you the tools and the skills you need to love better so you can live better. We are living and working in a time where sharing an opinion, any opinion, can feel like walking through a minefield. You know what's scarier than hearing someone say, "We need to talk"? Hearing, "What's your opinion?" or "What do you think?" We are all afraid of being judged for our beliefs, afraid of being misunderstood, of being trolled, of being canceled. So we hesitate to talk, we retreat, we stay silent. And when we do talk, we talk at each other instead of with each other. There's a book I recently read, How to Talk with Anyone About Anything. It's not about mastering small talk. It's about building the skills and courage to connect even when it's uncomfortable. And I don't think it's ever been more necessary than now. The book offers practical tools for navigating everyday conversations with strangers, coworkers, even family members, so we can show up with more presence, more confidence, and less fear. The skills they talk about don't just apply to casual interactions. They're the foundation for every relationship in our lives, including the ones that matter the most. Because real connection isn't just about knowing what to say. It's about staying present in moments of discomfort. It's all about navigating difficult conversations with curiosity instead of defensiveness. And in an era where so many of us are afraid to speak up, these are the skills we need if we want to keep relationships strong. That's where today's guests come in. We tend to think that conflict and differences in relationships means something's broken. That if we have differences of opinion and we argue, we must be mismatched, or worse, doomed. Well, what if those aren't signs that something's wrong, but instead the potential for a different, deeper kind of intimacy? That idea is the backbone of Imago Therapy, the model that helped my wife, Steph, and me stop fighting like we were in a cage match and start actually hearing each other. In fact, the work was so transformational in our own lives that Steph went on to specialize in couples therapy, and she's now a certified Imago relationship therapist. With me today are the creators of Imago Therapy, Dr. Harville Hendrix and Dr. Helen LaKelly Hunt. If their names sound familiar, it is because their book, Getting the Love You Want, has been a relationship Bible for more than 3 decades. They've changed the way we talk about love, conflict, and connection. And today they're here to help us learn how we can talk with anyone about anything, which happens to be the title of their latest book, right here. Before I start, I do just want to tell you what an honor it is to be here with the two of you. I know that you're pioneers in the world of mental health and couples therapy and relationship science. You can be in so many other places right now, and it is really so touching to me and to my listeners that you've taken the time to be here with me today. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, we're honored to be here. Thank you.
Yes.
That anybody wants to hear us talk is is a pleasure. I still get surprised by it. So thank you.
Your newest book, How to Talk with Anyone About Anything, builds on your foundational Imago tools by introducing safe conversations dialogue. It's a structured method designed to deepen our connection and to reduce conflicts across all types of relationship. Mm-hmm. So why did you decide to take your work beyond the romantic realm and apply it to the relationships and interactions we have with all people all the time?
Oh, I love that question because we didn't do it until about 10 years ago, but we should have done it earlier. And the reason is that we discovered over the 40 years of being in practice with couples that dialogue is what became the engine of the therapeutic process with couples, that problem solving, conflict resolution, communication skills, and all of that are really secondary to the dialogue process because those were all sort of head things. How do we solve problems to get better skills? But dialogue is a special way to talk that also involves and embodies a different way to relate, which moves from what we call, to try to make this clear, for all of human history, human beings have tended to engage in either monologue, with the king or emperor at the top, and he or she talks down, or the head of the tribe, or the head of the village. And
Hmm.
and then if people talk back, they did monologue. So we call it parallel monologue. And and it's like the air we breathe. So we don't even know that we're doing this. And what that means is that these two, I talk and you talk and I talk and you talk, always involve differences in opinion or differences in perspectives. And difference is always the source of tension. And
Hmm.
tension is behind, uh, uh, we call it tension about difference, is behind conflict. And conflict can lead then to polarization, like what's going on today, nearly all over
Hmm.
the world. And polarization can lead to war, like what's also going on today. So what we discovered with dialogue with couples, that while that tension is there, it doesn't polarize into conflict. Or to put it another way, the tension doesn't produce a polarization. It produces, because of the structure of dialogue, it produces a way to connect so that the tension becomes a part of a creative process. If we connect rather than polarize around our differences, then we enrich each other by the mutual collaboration about our differences. And then we can co-create how we're going to relate given those differences and what we're going to do given those differences. Then you have a highly functional, highly working relationship. And we saw over the years that while we had not taken it out, all our couples were. They were taking it to their children. Some of them were taking it to their businesses. They were taking it to their congregations and coming back and even asking, can we do this with our friends and so forth?
Yeah.
That began to hit us that they are taking it out. So one day it hit me that, and this is a poignant thing, about 10 years ago, I told Helen I was depressed, but it was a professional depression, not a clinical one. And the depression was I live with this woman who is one of the world's leading feminists and who has contributed to the world second to one, Gloria Steinem. So she's an activist. She's changing society and has done that. And here I am, helping couples resolve their issues. And couples make up 2% of the therapy population, and the therapy population is only 10 to 12% of the whole population. I'm never going to change the world. I'm primarily just healing a few people. Helen,
I'm going to push back on that, and I'm going to say that you have your tool, the dialogue, which we'll talk about in a moment and break down for the listeners, is so logical, applicable, easy to use, easy to understand, and it has such a ripple effect. So you teach one person, and then I get it in couples counseling, and I teach it to, I don't know, I have taught it to thousands of people,
oh,
and I'm
okay.
not even a couples therapist. So each of your therapists has influenced dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of people. And out of
Yes,
those hundreds of people, they have introduced they, but that's not to diminish Helen's achievements. Please go
yeah.
on.
No, and let me just mention, Darcy, our company has done our dialogue work. We have something you can purchase, a business can purchase called Connecting at Work. Because businesses, the CEO walks in one day and another person has resigned. And in a corporation, people the monologue, I'm the best. I want a raise. I want, they're concerned about what their job is supposed to be, but also how much money are they making. So he created a Connecting at Work program because at one point when we moved back to Dallas, we were analyzed by Bain, the business company that helps
Mm-hmm.
business
Yes.
become profitable. And they said your first customer should be corporations because when they learn it in their corporation,
It increases retention and lowers turnover enormously, and it improves morale. So it's good for business and it's good for people's relationships.
Well, and that's just it. When they learn it, to do it with the staff team and see the difference it makes, then they take it to their families.
Yes.
To both ends. So that's what our life is like these days.
So I'm going to go back and pick up, Darcy. So you're saying that you're challenging me that I wasn't having an impact on culture. You're saying you were one of the distributors of dialogue to the culture. You got it in a clinical setting and you took it out and taught it to everybody. And you imagine all the people we've trained are doing that. Did I get that?
And you're using a version of the dialogue and confirming that I understand you. You did. Let me modify that just a drop. Even if we're not outwardly teaching it, I think relationship skills, which is my life's work, they're contagious, they're airborne. And so if most people don't want to be taught by their friends, their family, their coworkers, but if I'm using an elevated level of relationship skills, people are learning them from me just by being in my presence. I'm not saying I do it right, Harville. I will tell you, I've been practicing for 30 years. I've been in more years of my own couples counseling, and it's always been with an Imago therapist than I can count. All of which is to say, despite the fact that I've been immersed in the work all these years, when you're really activated and lit up, you kind of want to be lazy, and you don't always want to use the tool that's going to get you out. I don't know what it is. I don't know what or why it is. But I think what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that you wrote this book because years ago when you taught it to therapists, the therapists started coming to you and saying, we have all these other applications for this. Is it okay if we start bringing this to other environments and settings? Do I have that right?
Yeah, partially right. Not only the therapists, but the couples themselves getting it in the clinic, like you said, would say, can I do this with my children, or can I do this at work or at my congregation? So I'm so rooted in the clinic and the relationship that it had not occurred to me. It really had not until they kept, then I began to get it. They're using it outside of the counseling relationship and outside of their own marriages, and they're making a difference. But I had this thing, the relative to Helen, who impact half the people on the planet, namely women. I was not a social activist. So I said to Helen, dialogue can be stripped of all the complexities of therapy and become just a skill itself that can be taught to anybody, anywhere, about any topic, and will change the whole dynamics. In other words, it'll bring a therapeutic effect. We won't call it therapy.
Correct.
It's a relational education, but it's a powerful therapeutic effect because it creates safety and people connect. And basically, some people who learn dialogue don't need to go to therapy. They
literally,
because they don't need all that history, memory work, exploration, interpretation, all the things that we learn from Freud and from the analytic and the psychotherapeutic, research exploration model. They just needed to be able to feel seen, heard, and valued. And if they're seen, heard, and valued, which they get in every transaction in the dialogue process, the anxiety goes away, the anger goes away, because everybody is anxious or angry because they don't feel seen, heard, and valued. So we decided that we needed to take it to the whole world. So that's what we did. We launched this global social movement called Safe Conversations Dialogue, with the goal of 2.4 billion people to be reached in the next 20 years. That would be the tipping point of the world's population in around 2040 to 50. So that's what we did. That's why we moved it from the intimate relationship to all relationships, businesses, schools, churches, education, universities, and wherever. Because it's not just a new way to communicate. It's a new way to relate. Equity, equality is the deepest human yearning. Well, none of us want to have anybody superior.
Yeah.
We don't mind having a leader or something like that, but not superior, not control, not verticality. History has been created vertically, and we need laterality. So that's what we set up. That's our goal, is to do that. And we only have 20 more years to do it.
I think this would be a good time for us to talk about what exactly the tool, the dialogue is. Would you be able
Okay.
to break that down for me?
Yes. So to go back again, the polarity is monologue, where I'm talking and you're supposed to be listening.
And the reason people do that is they've never been taught that there's another way to talk. Growing up, parents tell their kids, listen, make good grades. You got a science report, we got book reports. You have to get good grades or you can't, they won't graduate you from high school. And then once you graduate and you decide, do you want to become a doctor? Do you want to become a architect? Do you want to build airplanes? Well, you again are having to learn to be precise, accurate. You don't want the architect who built your building, suddenly the ceiling falls down. You want them to be accurate and precise. And people throughout their life have studied things, go, I know what's right, and I'm sure I'm correct, and you're not. And in many cases, romantic attraction to people, when they come together, they get married, and that's all they know how to do is problem solve with monologue.
Mm-hmm.
Learn the dialogue skills, people take turns. Then the sentence stems, they take turns talking and listening.
Right. So
And
it changes the balance of power from I know things you don't know, so you need to learn it. Like the parent does to the child. That's
Yes.
all across all ecosystems. The boss to the employee, the minister to his congregation or her congregation, and sometimes to husbands and wives. I know how to run this marriage, and you need to learn from me. But this makes somebody unequal.
Mm-hmm.
When you are unequal, you can only have one emotion, is anxiety. You're either here competing for power or you're submitting to power. And that's the
Okay.
human race for thousands and thousands of years. So that's why we've had so much conflict, so much war, and so forth. And we've had it. We're a species of war. And it's all because somebody's trying to control us and we don't like it.
it's also survival. You want to take care of yourself. Dialogue is two people taking turns talking and listening.
Can you walk us through the structure of the dialogue? The three of us know the shorthand, but I don't think our listeners, even though I've taught it in a few, I have not, Steph has taught it in a few different episodes. I would love for my listeners, our listeners, to hear from the people who invented it. Like,
Okay.
what is the structure of the dialogue?
And let me make an on-ramp comment that dialogue is not just better communication skill. It's a new way of relating that actually came into existence as a concept only 100 years ago. The idea of, and it came into the world through a man named Martin Buber in a book called The I Dash Thou.
Yeah.
There are two kinds of relationships, and you can say the vertical ones, the I it is that I'm the one and you're supposed to listen, or the I thou, we are equally honoring each other. And so it's a new way to relate. And then the way it starts is that if you want to talk, you always start all of your conversations with permission. Are you available for a conversation right now about, and you fill in the blank so your partner isn't blindsided. Are you available for a conversation about money or about sex life or about where we're going for dinner or whatever? You always fill in the blank, because if the blank is empty, the thing that all of us have to remember is Our brain is interested in one thing, surviving.
Mm.
It wants to survive. Then it can worry about thriving. But we can't play unless we're safe. So you want to fill in the blank. And this is really couples need to remember. Everybody needs to remember that you should ask permission, which is called managing boundaries. Are you available to talk? It's okay to say no and then set a time later.
And say what it's about, what to have for dinner, or the way you talk to a relative of mine. Why
Yeah.
the hell did you do that? Tell the content.
Right. What is the topic? So now I've asked, is it okay? And you've said yes. So you have, but before you say yes, in the training, you will say, so let me get this, which is the mirror. You want to have a time to talk about our sex life. Am I getting that? And you'd like to do that now. Am I getting that? Yes, you're getting that. Okay, I'm available. So that's the mirror. So now we have a sender who said, I want to talk. We have a receiver who says, let me see if I'm getting it. And yes, I'm available. Now the sender says, well, here's what I want to talk about, our money or sex life or whatever the topic is. And they say what it is, but they have to say it in a positive tone, not in how bad you have been in our relationship. They can say they have a frustration, but not that you're a jerk, because
Okay.
the one thing that has to be removed is negativity.
And one of the most important things is if you are frustrated with your partner, don't make an appointment and tell them what you're frustrated about. Make an appointment to have a request. Yesterday in the evening, you did da 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 da. Instead of that, next time, might you have handled it this way?
Yeah.
And tell them what you would like. Make a request.
So, right. So you have the sender, and the receiver says, okay, well, let me see if I got that. That's called a sentence stem. And you have to learn the sentence stems and use them. I worked for about 15 years to make them precise and efficient and very few words. So let me see if I got that. Or you can say, if I got that, you said blah, 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 blah. Then you do, the receiver does what we call an accuracy check. Did I get you or did I get it? And
Such an important part of the process because
Yeah.
so often the sender doesn't realize that they're not communicating exactly what they want to communicate, or
Right.
the receiver, the listener, is hearing it through a filter and not hearing it
Exactly.
accurately. It's such an important part of the
It's
process.
huge. Did I get that?
Okay.
And then the other person feels, you care? You even notice?
Yeah.
These sentence stems make the other person feel so different than a person who's been monologuing to them their whole life.
Right.
So in learning this, you have to do this structure. I've never found anybody who could just kind of do it. They have to use the structure. So that the second reason why it's important to say, did I get you? Is because the one thing that you said, I, as the listener, let's say I'm the receiver, while you're talking and I'm quote listening, I'm actually only hearing because I'm running a narrative. Why is she talking about that? No, that's not the way it was. I did close the garage door, but I'm running a little narrative that says, because clearly nobody's going to be sending you something, having a dialogue saying that you got everything right, you're correct, and all that. There's going to be a difference because difference is reality. There's no such thing as sameness. The difference is there. The second thing we've learned, and I've only learned this, fortunately, I scan research all the time, see if anybody knows anything I don't know yet. And I found this amazing thing. Our ears have the capacity for only 30% accuracy
Stop.
on a good day. On a
Oh, I
bad,
feel so much more sane now.
exactly. See, it's not the fact that you don't get it correctly is not really your fault. There are two things. One is you're running a narrative, which kind of interferes with accuracy. Secondly, your brain, even if you don't run that narrative and you're listening without the narrative, you only get 30% accuracy. So the neurophysiology of the brain receives only 30% of the acoustical waves accurately.
Wow.
If I'm upset, I don't get any of it correct. Brain.
Right, because we're in our amygdala, depending on how escalated we are. And like going back to what you said, see above, the most
Yeah,
important part for a human being is surviving. When we're in our amygdala, we're scanning, it's our threat responses come online, and we're just scanning the environment for threats. We're not really receiving anything.
exactly. Beautiful. You should be doing this interview. That's exactly right. Now, the question is, and there's no full answer to this now in the research, how come our mouths really developed and human beings,
Some of us more than others.
some of us make a career using our mouths. So that's all I've ever gotten paid for was my mouth. And well, I guess my hearing, well, as a therapist, we were the only therapists get paid to listen. And if you're not paid to listen, very few people listen. But we don't know, but it makes sense that it was an adaptive evolutionary thing. We needed to be able to make sounds so that people would not mess with us or scare them away or whatever. But all we needed to know was for the ear was whether the noise we heard was dangerous or safe. So we didn't need the refinement. Fortunately, what we've learned is when a person decides they will practice this process, oh, let me see if I got it, and then accurately and word for word say back what they heard.
Because that's the mirroring part. You then
That's the
give
mirror-
back what you thought you heard the person say, giving the person an opportunity to say, to
Yeah.
course correct if you got it wrong or if they said it wrong.
And if you practice that word for word with intention, your hearing capacity increases. So
I
we
totally believe that.
actually overcome the evolutionary plateau, apparently, of the ear by the practice of mirroring. Now, if you consider that mirroring has not been popular on the planet, very few people on the planet have improved their receptors, their oral receptors. But if you do practice mirroring, meaning you have to listen intently enough to get accurately what the other person is saying, your ear is like a muscle. It increases that capacity. So that's the second thing you have to do is to say, let me see if I got it. Accuracy check. And the person you're talking to may say, well, yes or no. And usually they'll say, well, you got most of it or some of it. But I also said, and they send it back, and you say, well, let me try that. So you also said X, Y, and Z. And you go back and forth because you want the sender to experience being accurately heard. And that's important for the sender's evolutionary defensive brain, because if I'm not accurately heard, then I'm not heard and seen and valued. My little brain is going to go, well, she really didn't get it. So now I don't know what she's going to do. And I have to now, what am I going to do now? Yell at her or say it again or walk away or whatever. So you're going to
I
all.
usually just raise my volume because I assume that she cannot hear my voice.
Okay.
And we will laugh at each other now. And I'll be like, I'm not sure why I thought you had an auditory processing issue there. Or I don't know why I thought you had a hearing problem. You actually, turns out you did have an auditory processing issue.
Right.
Okay.
We
So,
all do. I think that's the greatest salvation of that research, and was your response. Oh my God. So my not hearing is not all my fault. There's an evolutionary genetic limitation, but it is my responsibility to rev this up and practice this muscle.
having studied brain science, which I have loved studying, and a hospital even took our information and processed it and gave this feedback that when you're frustrated with your partner, let's just talk about two people and a relationship. When you're frustrated or disappointed, and maybe even angry about an opinion or something that they did. There is a 2.4-pound organ in everyone's skull, little, that's considered the most complicated organ in the universe. But brain science has reduced two parts of the brain. The lower brain controls vital functions. By 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock tonight, Darcy, you're going to feel tired, and you're going to want to go to bed. And after you had a good dinner, so you'll be able to go to bed. And then in the morning, after 8 hours, your body sort of wakes up. And guess what? You're hungry and you need to eat. And your body tells you things that takes care of your body. And so we have a brain book. And so we talk about the lower brain as a crocodile because it's protecting you to be a healthy person. But if all you do is use the lower brain, self-protect, it releases cortisol, adrenaline, and toxic neurochemicals that when you go to bed, if you're frustrated, you don't sleep well, and you don't live as long. If all you do, if this is how your brain works all the time. Now, the sentence stems of dialogue you have to talk in a way you've been told to talk, and you have to remember what that is. So this is the neocortex, the upper brain. Left brain hemisphere, you try to mirror someone back accurately, and you have to be precise. And the right brain hemisphere can have empathy for someone, feel empathic. And between the two, Dan Siegel, who is the most famous brain scientist, okay, Darcy knows him. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is a tiny little part of the brain, but he calls it move beyond predication, where you wonder. So when you say to your partner, is there more about that? Like, for example, you're discussing who you voted for in the last election. And like,
Lord help us.
what one of you had one opinion and one of you had another opinion. So that thing don't bring up. So don't bring up problems after 6 o'clock at night. But when you say to someone, is there more about that? Oftentimes, why did you vote for that candidate? And they explain. And then just rather than going, well, that's stupid, but you mirror them, you validate, and that the 3 words or 5, is there more about that? You go into the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, where your brain automatically releases dopamine, acetylcholine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and you are a healthier person.
Right. It immediately begins to bring us into the prefrontal cortex when we feel attuned by the other person, which we feel through the sentence stem. Is that right?
And basically, not knowing is the best thing to do before you go to sleep, other than telling your partner that they're wonderful. But do not bring up problems before going to sleep. Because again, we actually have on Kindle a book called The Wise Owl. Is the neocortex as opposed to the crocodile and these neurochemicals. So your relationships are healthier. Guess what? You are a healthier person when you use dialogue.
You've brought us to the mirroring part.
Yeah.
What happens after the receiver confirms that they've heard it, they've gotten it right?
Well, and that's where if you say, well, and is there more about that?
Right.
That's when a person feels like you're listening to me. You're not waiting for your turn to talk, but then you're a healthier person when you wonder.
So you bring curiosity in. And this is the new piece in the conversation, because the old model of conversation is, okay, so you got it now. Can I talk? No, the receiver goes one step further and says what Helen just did. Is there more? And that brings curiosity in. Now, the sender's brain really relaxes now. because it's been sending a message, getting mirrored back, but waiting for the reaction.
Right.
When the reaction doesn't come, you see how you begin to feel safe. The reaction doesn't come. What comes is, hey, I'm curious. Is there more about that? And you have to do it authentically. Is there more about that? And then the brain says, there is some more about that I'd like to say. And so I say, well, I'm available. So they send that, and you do the mirroring back and forth. And then the next step in the process is, no, there's no more. And then the receiver says, well, let me see. I want to see if I've got all of that. It's important to say all of that. We call that the summary. And that the person says, so if I got it all, you started blah, 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 blah. Did I get it all? And the person says, well, you got enough of it. I'm okay. Or, well, there's one piece you left out. Could I send that again? And you go back and forth. So then the person says, yeah, I feel heard. So then the receiver says, I'd like to validate that. That's the next stage, validation. And the validation means I see how your brain works and the world in which your brain lives. So the validation is you make sense. Given that you had that experience, it really makes sense that you would have had that thought and would have done that behavior. Is that a good validation? Now, that doesn't mean I'm agreeing with you.
Mm-hmm.
That you have to remove. But I'm seeing you. For you, I'm seeing your reality. But I can't agree with you anyway. No two brains can ever really agree because we're all uniquely created to see a unique part, to see the world through our filters uniquely. So you have to let that go, that there can be, I get you doesn't mean I agree with you. It means I get you. I see how you are operating. And then you do empathy. If that was a good validation. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I feel seen. Um, well, I can imagine, given all that, you must feel really angry, or you must feel joyful, or really scared, or some feeling. Empathy is about the affective message. Validation is about the cognitive message, the thinking part. And then empathy is about the feeling that's triggered by the thinking part. So now the receiver has received all of that and validated and expressed empathy and then said, and thank you for sharing that with me. I'm available now to hear what you want to say about this topic or about some other topic, about this topic.
Mm-hmm.
Then you do that back and forth. So two people enlarge each other's world by sharing without criticism. I have your world in my head now, and now I have a bigger world. But if I negate you by disagreeing with you and throwing you out, I keep my own little world and I leave out the beauty of your world or the content of your world or whatever the enrichment would be. So what we want is to help couples, now individuals, people in companies, corporations, politically, wherever, universities, collaborate. And collaboration becomes a very, very, very important process because it's two worlds not colliding in polarization, but engaging, growing and getting more and more and more. It's like if somebody was in a room and you were looking out a window and there were four people, you had four windows. This was a fourth room. You were looking out the room. The two things that can happen. Everybody thinks they saw reality and they say it's a stream, it's a tree. No, it's a mountain. No, well, it's a car out there and a horse. Well, it's all of that, but I can't get all that. I only get my picture, my
The
window.
one window that you can look out of, that's the purview you have access to.
Yeah. And the model breaks down because you would think I could go to your window and see the tree and the stream, but I can't. I can only get your words about the tree. in the spring.
And I would like to let the people listening recognize that Darcy just mirrored Harville back.
Yes.
She's doing the process.
Very helpful for people who have ADHD. It keeps me engaged. It also makes sure that I'm processing the right information.
Yeah. All right. So it keeps you engaged to mirror and you're processing the right information, accurate information. And it'll do it for ADHD, but it also does it. In fact, many people say you can't teach dialogue to HDA people. Actually, they get better. 100%.
Absolutely. The idea of practicing therapy as a listener only, I would drift off. I would not be present. I couldn't do it. It would feel too passive. I wouldn't feel engaged. I wouldn't feel stimulated. The mirroring is the one piece that I have right. My clients, I think, would confirm that. It gets tricky for me between the empathy and the validation. I generally do a hybrid, and that's where I need my wife to help me untangle the two, because they do different things, as you just explained. The validation is more of a cognitive thing. The empathy is more of a heartfelt thing. Is that right?
That's correct.
I might actually be able to do this now, you guys.
When you validate, that means you make sense, but it makes sense to them.
Yeah.
You may have a completely different opinion, but in a relationship, make it safe for the other person to be different. One of the things that in our weekend workshops, I begin, we take turns lecturing, and Harville lets me do this at the very beginning, but guess what? Welcome to the workshop. Now, difference is a part of nature. Hot, cold, dark, light, wet, dry. So don't think your partner is just like you. and you married somebody different, and that's okay.
Support for this episode comes from Mindful Care. Right now, it feels like the cracks in our society have grown deeper. Political polarization, economic uncertainty, and constant stress can leave anyone feeling stuck. Mindful Care offers same-day access to expert clinicians and personalized treatments to help you feel like yourself again. And they accept all types of insurance, so support is just a call or a text away. Contact Mindful Care at 516-505-7200 or visit mindful.care to book your appointment today. One of the most powerful parts of the book I found is the emphasis on emotional safety, not on agreement. That is actually what allows for honest, productive conversations. I have a client right now who knows that their experience has informed this question. Can you please explain what is meant by creating emotional safety in conversations, and then give some do's and don'ts for creating it?
Well, let me just say that what we just talked about structure is that emotional safety requires structure. I need to know what you're going to do next. Otherwise, my brain is going to wonder, do I need to run towards you aggressively or run away from you or lie down and play dead? How do I keep myself safe here?
So it's important that I be able to predict your responses and your behavior for me to feel safe with you. That's the first thing. So if I'm having a conversation with somebody and their response style, I can't seem to crack the code on it. I can't seem to figure out what the formula is. I never know what I'm going to get. That is one sign of not having it.
Yeah, right. You don't have it. And if you then add to that judgment or criticism, we call it negativity, then you really up the thing, because the brain was programmed millions of years ago to see all negativity as a threat to survival. And even a little threat, the brain doesn't know about little. It just knows I'm threatened. It might go away, but it could escalate. So you have to remove negativity from all relationships. So people ask, well, just from our intimate partnership? And the answer is from your life. Negativity, nobody has ever done any research on negativity in which they found a positive benefit to any negativity. It is always a negative outcome because it triggers those toxic
Wow.
chemicals, neurochemicals in you, which impact your immune system and cause the immune system to go into stress. And when it goes into stress, then everything about your body is all of a sudden, into this, and your lifespan is shortened by negativity. So safety is only guaranteed if there's a zero negativity. So that's a fundamental principle in the dialogue process. It is done with zero negativity. And then the structure we just talked about is the other thing. It's you create safety when people can predict what you're going to do next. So if I know if I say something, you're going to say, "Well, let me see if I got that." But if I don't know, I'm going to assume you're going to take issue with me. And then it might be, nothing, but it might be that was stupid. Where did you come up with an idea like that? Then the brain is programmed to anticipate the negative.
We're more inclined to land on and recall the negatives than
Yeah.
to land on and recall the positives.
And that's because we were shaped in an environment where there was no security. So the brain for millions of years has gone through. My first thought can't be it's safe because it could be that person or that noise or that animal is going to kill me. So I have to go, first of all, okay, not dangerous. So I can go toward it. But if I can't say not dangerous, then I have to imagine what do I have to run to protect myself or what? So in order to be safe, there needs to be predictability.
Hmm.
And also you can create the safety by saying, whenever somebody is coming on at me or saying things, I'm going to always, instead of taking them on, I'm going to always mirror them, no matter what they're saying. They say, "You're stupid. That was awful. You voted for that person, blah, blah, blah." I'm going to say, just hold on. I want to get this. Let me see if I'm getting this. I want to do that for two reasons. One is if I don't want my old brain reactivity to start up because then I'm going to go defensive and attacking. I want instead for my neocortex to respond. And my neocortex is going to be interested in my safety. And I know that I'm safe if I don't trigger your anxiety or your anger. So I do that by showing interest. Let me see if I'm getting you. And am I getting you? And so is there more about that? By this time, you've moved to your prefrontal cortex.
So you do it as a grounding exercise for yourself,
Absolutely.
not even for the other person. I'm a selfish person. I can get with that. Like I need to find some individual gain from it other than us coming out okay. I think you just gave me motivation to do that more.
Yeah, right. The mirror is a grounding exercise.
For me.
And it can, for me, and a connecting exercise for us.
Yeah.
I mirror you. You also know I'm not dangerous because I'm interested in trying to get clear what you're saying instead of saying that's stupid and doing all kinds of things to you. Words are like bullets.
They
So
really are.
you want to do this. So it's like the dialogical process operates out of safety. Safety is the fundamental environment that it creates. And when you're safe, then everything in your body works better.
Mm-hmm.
You're relaxed. You can feel your body relaxing. You're now really empowering yourself.
Right.
And when you do that and give that same experience to the people you're with, and like you said earlier, you become dialogical with the person who doesn't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You said something sort of like that early.
I did. I will use the dialogue as a tool for interacting,
Yeah.
whether the person knows it or not.
Right. Yeah. But they know something happened. And then you can notice when you do that for, a few minutes, they may start saying, "Well, tell me about you."
They do. And it's so funny because I get this in Uber rides, I get this in taxis, I
Yeah,
get this when I go to the bodega. I always thought that, people must smell shrink on me. They just must smell that I'm open to their personal stories. But you're probably right that they hear the way I speak and I speak, and
yeah,
I'm probably more inquisitive than most New Yorkers.
yeah. And here's the thing that I remember. We have only one human need, only one, to be seen, heard, and valued.
Yeah.
We didn't get that in childhood. We will spend all our lives trying to
I, I
be
I'm doing it.
and
I'm doing it. I embody that belief. That
yeah,
is true. The person who didn't get it in childhood or felt that she didn't have it spent her life teaching people how to love better so they can live better. One of the
yeah,
parts of your book that really struck me is that you write that many couples expect their partner to share the exact same perspective that they have. That conflict often stems from the belief that we should see things the exact same way. And you suggest that the way forward is a kind of radical acceptance of our differences.
yes.
But does that mean that common ground doesn't matter at all? Are there not some shared values or beliefs that we need to be well matched?
Well, the answer to that is yes and yes, and also no. The fundamental thing everybody wants is to stay alive and thrive. And I want to do that with you in this moment. And I don't have to have a shared value for that. That transcends all values. That's the value. So we want to do that, which means we strive for safety. The second thing is difference is ontological. That means it's a part of reality. There's no such thing as sameness anywhere in the universe at any level. I'm curious about quantum physics and don't know anything about math, but I do. I am a philosopher. I can understand their assumptions based on this math about what the universe is like. So I put in a variety of different ways into the computer the question about particles.
Hmm.
And the short version of this is all particles are unique.
Hmm.
When you split a particle, you don't get an identity. You get a unique particle. You get two unique ones.
This
That's
quest for sameness is like it's an exercise in futility.
an exercise in futility. God cannot make a copy.
Hmm.
I think God is not interested in making copies. I think God is an obsessive maniac about novelty and creativity. If you look around you, you see diversity everywhere.
Hmm.
Just look at a tree. Every every leaf on the tree is different. And when you let yourself see that, it's like Helen talks about wonder all the time. It's like, how come these leaves are all the same but different? I mean,
Yeah.
like 95% the same, but there's a little twist here. This is true of everything at every level. So you can't even be the same. But the thing you know is with this diversity, look at what I learn if I give up everything has to be the leaf that I have.
But in a partnership, in a marriage, in an intimate relationship, we don't need any common ground.
I don't think you need it. I think other than the common ground is that is like Martin Buber said, I honor you as a thou. That's
Wow.
the primary ground is that your value is intrinsic in your existence and not dependent on any value you are to me. That should be a common ground. That you don't have to do something to make me value you. You exist independent of me as an ontological value. And that maybe could be a ground. And then after that, we can talk about am I a Republican or a Democrat or spiritual or not spiritual? And those things, of course, make conversations maybe easier or necessary at times. And usually, yeah, it's easy if you grow up in the same church, and then you don't have to say, "Well, are we going to go to the Catholic Church today, then the Protestant Church next week because we can't agree on religion." So
Hmm.
agreeing that you will be religious or you will be a Catholic might be operationally useful in terms of how you plan your life and where you go on vacations.
So you're saying that the one principle or value that we need to have in common is to honor one another, and it doesn't matter what each of us likes to do as preferences, as long as we can honor one another, any relationship can work.
Hmm. And actually, it doesn't work well until you get there, because if
No,
I'm
I can definitely attest to that. Carry on.
well, if I'm going to value you because of what you do for me, then you're just an object who meets my needs. But if I value you because you exist, then you are a person who's not here to meet my needs, but you're here because the universe created you and I get to be with you. And now we can talk about
Wow.
how do we want to do vacations? Like Helen and I like to wander. I'm a wanderer because I grew up on a farm where I never saw anything, but the rear end of a mule plowing all day. And I always wanted to see stuff. Helen grew up with all the world available to her, so she likes to stay home. So we sat down and did this collaborative thing for a long time. Like, okay, I definitely don't want to watch travelogues. I mean, it's okay, but I want to go see, smell, and touch and all that. So we sat around for a long time and we came up with, you know what? Why don't we rent a motorhome? And I can drive and wander, and you're at home in the motorhome,
It's
and
such a
you
good idea.
take all of those DVDs about where you want to go, and you can watch them in the back, while I'm driving. Because I don't need you to be up front talking to me. I'm an introvert anyway. I like to look and don't want to be distracted by somebody talking to me when I'm coming over a hill and seeing a mountain. I want to see the mountain. I don't want to hear, I don't even want to hear you say, wow, look at that mountain, because that interferes with my experience of the mountain. And it's great that we have similar cultural value systems. Like we are both committed to improving the human race, and
Hmm.
then doing it in the women's field for a long time. I was doing it in therapy, and then we came together, and now we do it together because we're both pushing this dialogue project. That, in fact, that's become I would say that our legacy will be the word dialogue. That
It,
we
it absolutely will be.
Dialogue is the connector for both sides of that. And because dialogue is a new thing in the world, Buber came up with the idea, but we didn't know what to do with it. He didn't say, so
Right.
here's
There
how
was
you
no
do that.
right. There was no practical application.
No
It was
practical application.
he was a philosopher, right? And that was his thesis. It was brilliant. Brilliant concept with no practical application is not very
Practical
useful.
And I'm a conceptual operational guy. My brain does left brain and right brain. I've always been a left right brain person. If you can think it, you should be able to do something. So we came up with dialogue as an operational process. And then when we got this done, I went back and did my research and discovered that actually we had him operationalize Buber's basic concept. But here's the other exciting thing. At the same year that Buber brought dialogue into the world, Niels Bohr brought quantum physics into the world. And quantum physics, from his view, changes reality from interacting things like atoms. And
Hmm.
then that became the model for people. So people are individuals. The individual is the centerpiece, has been a Western civilization, and therefore, but they're not connected. They're just
Hmm.
interactive, transactional. Bohr says, well, all those things are doing that, but they're connected and connecting. The reality is a field of interconnectivity. All of a sudden, you have a new reality in which dialogue is the obvious operational interaction between that. So Buber and all preceded us, but when we began to operationalize dialogue and built it and sort of dug it out of our therapy work with couples, it was rooted in the best science in the world and in one of the greatest philosophers.
That's really, really amazing. That's a great root in history.
That's fun to know it wasn't just a little project, but it was actually a part of the emergence of a new phase in human collective consciousness.
That's part of the scientific method, is that we're building off of each other and we're
Right,
expanding things.
right.
You have said that defensiveness causes us to focus on protecting ourselves, and that
Yeah,
when we do that, we lose access to empathy and connection. The
yes.
antidote you suggest is curiosity, which sounds simple, but it can feel almost impossible in the moment. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind, because I want to understand this, if you wouldn't
Yeah,
mind going through a personal example. I'll give you a personal example, um, and show me how I might dial up curiosity in this situation.
sure.
So, as you know, I am gay. I'm married to a woman. When I hear someone talk about religion in a fundamental way, I immediately feel armor start to cover my skin. I'm
Mhm.
aware that I am bracing for rejection and judgment. And
Mm,
because my natural response style is the fight style, you have fight, flight, or freeze. My
yeah,
my
this is fun.
go-to organically is to
Yeah,
fight. Talking points start flooding through my head. I
yeah.
become internally preoccupied with ways to debate the person, to underscore
Yes.
their own hypocrisy. How do I
Mhm.
dial up curiosity in moments like that?
That is such a good question. How, when I want to kill them, can I become interested in them or curious about
Because
it?
I want to be better. I really, really do want to understand how to use this. So I picked for me one of the most activating scenarios I
Yeah.
can imagine. And I figured if anyone can hold space for me, it's Harville. I ran these questions by Steph ahead of time. She said, "You know, he's an ordained minister, right?" And I said, "This man is the father of couples therapy. If he can't hold space for me, I have no hope." So here we go.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Um, and thank you for the example, because that makes it concrete. So the curiosity, lead with curiosity is again an abstract concept. So we want to operationalize how can you get there? And nobody can just go to curiosity when they're triggered, but you can go to mirroring when you're triggered. You can train yourself. Okay, when that armor starts,
Hmm.
instead to let me say to the person who's talking religion, whether they're talking religion as a criticism of you or just religion or whatever triggers you, say, you do the mirror. So let me see if I'm getting you. You believe that God, or you believe that people who blah blah blah, people who are gay. Am I getting, can you say more about that? By this time, you're now up here.
I'm in
Nothing
my prefrontal cortex versus,
your prefrontal,
my amygdala.
right. And you want to get there. So you train yourself to do that. As soon as you experience a trigger, go to mirror.
Hmm.
Let me see if I'm getting you. And you might even say, could you say that again? Because I really want to hear it accurately. Because
Oh my
you,
Lord. I mean, no pun intended. Uh, but so I'm literally leaning into the very conversation that I'm
yes,
dreading.
yes. But
And
what,
it's going to ground me because I'm going to move from my amygdala into my prefrontal cortex, you say.
that's right. Going to ground you. And if you have to ask again, it's because you were so triggered that you didn't get it.
Yeah,
But after our conversation, you know that the next time that the skill is to mirror, and you know how to do that.
I do.
So you say, can you say that again? I'm really interested because they may have said something awful. Can you say that again? And now already they are feeling less aggressive toward you because you've shown interest. Interest always reduces the aggression or fear, the anxiety of another person. And then say, well, let me see if I'm getting it. If I got it, you really think that gay, lesbian people cannot be Christians and that
Hmm.
the Bible judges them and blah, 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 whatever. Am I getting that? So
Hmm.
is there more about that? And probably you're going to get something that goes into their history where they got hurt for some reason, and it made them become judgmental Christians. But in any case, the polarization didn't happen. They don't feel attacked. You didn't get attacked because you mirrored the thing back to them. And they'll become in their prefrontal cortex. And you may have a conversation. And you don't, and also give up ever wanting them to agree with you. Just give that up, especially on that issue, a spiritual view of gay lesbian preference. If you've got an orthodox religious view of that, that's going to be hard to let go of. But you could probably carve a relationship with that person, and that would not be an active part of the relationship. At least you were a person who was their worst human being who became one of the best experiences in their lives because you didn't criticize them back. You didn't criticize them. You didn't tell them they were phony, that Christians, no Christian would ever be judgmental. You didn't do any of that. You heard them. You got their reality. And you can say to them, now that you're regulated,
Yeah.
You make sense. I can imagine, given your background and your experience in your life or whatever it was, that you would feel that about gay people. I can imagine. And I can imagine that being around me makes you feel angry. Or is there another feeling?
Yeah.
Doing it. Well, you can see now they can't keep up the barrage because now you've created a container for them in which they can drop because their criticism of you is just a defense. And it's a projection of something unresolved in themselves. And if you take it on, it gets bigger. But if you mirror it and hold it and say, I get it, I see why and how you would think that way. And it makes sense. And I don't have any judgment about it. That's your reality. I don't have to change your reality. You live in that box. I see the box you live in. And it's okay with me for you to live in that box.
So what I hear you saying is that I don't have to feel the emotion of curiosity. I can use curiosity as a verb.
Yeah.
By mirroring.
And saying, is there more? Curiosity is expressed in the phrase, we call it the sentence.
Is there more?
That's curiosity. So you've operationalized curiosity.
I love that.
And you've removed the polarization with this person.
I cannot thank you enough for your time
You're
today and for taking the time to really help me and our listeners understand how to apply some of these lofty concepts, but you really have, this is why Oprah discovered you. This is why you have spread like wildfire in the best way across the globe. It's because you take these lofty, intangible, gas-like concepts and you turn it into something that we can hold on to and then give to one another. We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling is a Sterling Standard production. Editing and sound engineering is by Bart Migal. Our theme music is by Trending Music. Special thanks to Amanda Cristiani. If you're like me and you want to keep We Need to Talk free and not behind a paywall, please make sure that you follow the show if you don't already, and ideally, share the episode with a friend or two. If you do that for me, I'll be able to continue showing up for you just as I have to give you free, quality content with facts you can rely on. We'll be back on Tuesday with another episode packed with the relationship, dating, and mental health hacks you've come to expect. References are always linked in the show notes. I'll see you soon.